Nonprofits are an integral part of the community, providing a wide variety of services and often stepping in to assist people when they need help the most. Just this past weekend, when the tornado struck Kentucky, local nonprofits organized and deployed to help our neighbors to the south. We'll learn more about some of our local nonprofits this week on Newsmakers, presented by WNIN and the Evansville Courier and Press. It's the end of the year, and we thought it would be nice to profile local nonprofits. I'm joined by Tim Black, President and CEO of WNIN, to talk about why we're doing this program. Tim, welcome.
Thanks a bunch, Tom. Glad to be here.
So why did you think it was important to highlight the work of nonprofits?
Well, Tom, it's an interesting thing. I think we always think it's important to highlight nonprofits. We're a nonprofit ourselves, so we understand that, but I think we're a very unique nonprofit in that we've got a pretty big voice in the community with both TV and radio. So we have an opportunity, I think, to put the spotlight on some other nonprofits. And then, of course, timing being what it is with the tragedy and the tornadoes and all that's happened to the south of us, I think it's just especially important.
Well, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks a bunch, Tom.
All right. As tornadoes hit Kentucky last weekend, our next guest was probably immediately on alert. Whenever disaster strikes, small or large, the Red Cross is often one of the first organizations on the scene. Joining us is Theo Boots, Executive Director of the Southwest Indiana chapter of the Red Cross. Theo, thanks for taking time this week to join us.
Sure, glad to be here.
When you first hear about the potential for a natural disaster like a tornado, what do you do immediately?
So our disaster team gets everyone together. Now the technology is so great, we can get together on a Zoom call, Teams call, phone call, and we start planning and we make sure we are prepared. And so what does that mean? They're always checking for signs of inclement weather. And so we want to make sure our volunteers are on standby, our shelters, we know where they're at. Are they on standby? Are our vehicles gassed up? Are our trailers that have our equipment, is it ready to go? The tires aren't flat, all those kinds of things.
Well, the Western Kentucky Red Cross chapter is probably the primary responder for this particular crisis. But these tornadoes created so much devastation. How do other regional chapters assist in a situation like this?
This is such a magnitude of a disaster that it's difficult for one local group, one local chapter to be able to respond to this. But immediately what would happen is the closest responders are going to respond first. And we're going to take care of the immediate needs. That's what Red Cross does, making sure we're taking care of immediate needs. What does that mean? That means, do you have a place to stay? Do you have food? Do you need, is your medication need to be replaced? Things we're not thinking about. If people are on oxygen, their glasses, and so we have health services and mental health and spiritual call folks on call. And so that's what we do at first. If they need additional responders, which in this case, this disaster was such a large magnitude, they did. And so they're going to call the closest first, but then actually, responders have come from all over the country. Red Cross can ramp up very quickly and pull from wherever we need. And we needed already trained, skilled folks to respond to this. And so we have right now 180 on the ground. We have 200 en route coming from all over the country. The Evansville airport is the secondary airport, so people are flying into Evansville and they're driving, to the destination that they need to go to.
From far away locale, other parts of the
from
country?
all over the country, where from the specific positions that we need. And so what this tells me, first of all, it was such a big disaster, we would have had to pull from all over the country to assist something like this. But this also tells me that we need to ramp up our local disaster team. And we do, because we need to be prepared locally. So people are calling us now, want to help. Well, we need to send skilled, already trained disaster responders. And but you can call and get trained now and be ready to go. And we think this disaster, the recovery is going to be a while. You might be able to be, depending on what you're going to volunteer for, you might be able to go to this particular disaster. But if not, you're going to be ready to go to help when it happens in our community. And the everyday disaster. And the everyday disaster is home fires. So every day in Indiana, we respond to 3 to 4 home fires. And in our Southwest chapter, we're responding to home fires every week. And so we need to be ready to go for the everyday disaster and then the bigger disasters.
Well, do you think you've identified any areas through this experience where you can improve?
I think we knew this before the disaster, but that we need more volunteers on our disaster team.
Well, we've seen a lot of our local nonprofits immediately react and create drives for a variety of items for the victims. What are some of the things that people in our area who are wondering, what can I do to help?
Sure. Well, we had a telethon today. It ended earlier today, but you can still give. Our website's still active at redcross.org/Tri-State Cares if you'd like to give to that, or you can always go to 1-800-RED-CROSS or redcross.org. And then really take the time to consider volunteering for your Red Cross disaster team. And if disaster is not your area, there's so many things that you could help to support your Red Cross in the community.
People can go to your site and
yes, they can go to redcross.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS.
So what are some of the services that Red Cross provides for people in our area on a regular basis?
Well, like I said, the number one disaster is home fires. And so what does that mean when you have a home fire? What's the Red Cross response? What does that entail? So many times people get out just with the clothes on their back. And even if you have insurance is not going to help you at 2 a.m. when you're lost your driver's license, your medication. How are you going to get that replaced tomorrow? We have mental health people on call, nurses on call, spiritual care people on call to assist for those. And again, we're going to help with immediate needs. Do you have a place to stay, food? And then we're going to assign a caseworker. And in a day or two, we're going to help you on that road to recovery, however long that takes. If you've lost everything and you don't have insurance, it's a more difficult road to recovery. But even if you have insurance, you still need help navigating that process. But beyond the disaster, we do preparedness classes, helping us on teaching preparedness classes, and service with our forces. We have a lot of programs for our military and our veterans, as well as blood. No, it's not a volunteer position for phlebotomists. We're looking for trained, those are employees that actually take the blood, but we need volunteers to work the drives to help make the experience for the donor a little bit better. You register people in, you help with the snacks. And so there's just a wide variety of volunteer opportunities.
Any message that you want to leave
Sure.
people with?
Well, the Red Cross is 90% volunteer, which is just a great statistic. And because of that, 90 cents out of every dollar goes straight to programs. And so we appreciate the community and we appreciate everyone's support. And, we hope that you would take the time to look up Red Cross and see how you can be involved with your local Red Cross.
Theo Boots, thank you for joining us on Newsmakers today.
Sure. Great to be here.
Our next guest is the president of the District Council of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, Dan Miller. Dan, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Langhorne.
Is the Society of St. Vincent de Paul in Evansville involved in any way in aiding the tornado victims in Kentucky?
At this point, not yet. We belong to a national St. Vincent de Paul Society organization in St. Louis. That organization has a separate disaster services agency that's a separate 501c3 not-for-profit corporation, and it is able to get its own funds. But the society has traditionally, over the years, been on the ground very early after a national disaster has hit. And we in Evansville were one of those locations several years ago when I was just a member of the society, not the president. There was a different president in charge, thank heavens. And they received grants from our national society to do things like we opened a store in the old Lawndale Shopping Center where we were able to give away appliances to families who had been displaced by the tornado and things like that. I actually know some Vincentians out of Mayfield, Kentucky. I have not heard what has happened to them. They are probably in the situation as, where they are both responders and victims all at the same time. The Catholic Church in Mayfield appears, from what I've read, to have at least survived pretty much intact, because I've read that some of the assistance is being coordinated out of the church facility. So I'm hopeful that they are all right, but I have not heard yet. We will ultimately, I think, in Evansville be asked to share some of our resources with the National Disaster Services and maybe even with individual conferences in Kentucky.
Well, tell us a little bit about your resources and your basic mission.
So our basic mission, we were started in the 1840s in Paris, France, by a group of college students at the University of the Sorbonne. And basically our main mission is our spiritual growth, but the way that manifests itself is to go out to the poor and assist the poor. And so one of the things that we say about ourselves is that no work of charity is foreign to the society. In Evansville, we have several different things. We have 245 active members who are members of 19 conferences in Gibson, Warwick, Vanderburgh, and Posey counties. And they make home visits. We receive information that somebody is in need of assistance, and two of us, at a minimum, go and visit them in their home and do what we can for assistance. Those conferences raise their own money, usually from their Catholic parishes, with which they are able to give assistance. If they can't give assistance, we try to partner with the trustee or Salvation Army or other agencies to provide assistance. I know that in our last fiscal year, which ended on September 30th, we gave almost $500,000, or actually over $500,000 away in rent assistance, utilities assistance, and other assistance. We also have what we call special works. Our food pantry is one of those special works. And we're in the midst of doing the financial report for the food pantry, the annual report, but I know that in the last 2 months, the food pantry has assisted 647 families with food for a total of 1,390 persons. And then we run the thrift store, and the thrift store does two things for us. One, it is a source of free or reduced cost items for the poor. So if I refer somebody for assistance from our thrift store, they generally get clothing for free, and we're able to, from our resources, pay for things like appliances or furniture if they need it. The only thing, and most of those things are used except for beds. We don't give away used beds. We have something called a bed in a box. So that's the first thing that our thrift store does. The second thing that our thrift store does is serve as an income generator for the society for other things that we hope to do, like a mentoring program for people who are some of our neighbors and clients.
Where exactly is that thrift store?
I'm sorry?
Where exactly is that thrift store?
The thrift store is at I can never remember the address. It's 767 East Walnut Street. It's on the way to downtown Evansville from Highway 41. You can't miss it. It's on the left as you go down. And thankfully, Walnut Street is now open fully. We've spent several years under construction there for sewer and other things, but it's easily accessible now. The thrift store is at the intersection of Lafayette and Columbia Street across from the Deer Head.
Well, if somebody watching this wants to reach out and help, how would they make contact with you guys?
So we have a website. It's www.svdpevansville.org. And there you can find all kinds of resources, including addresses. If you wish to help at the food pantry, please contact them through the website at the website number first. If you want to help out at the store, in most cases, you can just simply show up and help at the store. And if you want to join us again as an active Vincentian, please contact us through the website. And if they don't put you in touch with our executive director, they'll put you in touch with me, and I'll get you set up.
All right. Well, Dan Miller, thank you for joining us on Newsmakers today.
Thank you.
Here with me now is Megan Parrish of Habitat for Humanity of Evansville. Megan, thanks for joining us on Newsmakers.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us, most people are familiar with Habitat, but give us a brief rundown of your mission.
Sure. So at Habitat, we say we build homes, communities, and hope. So our mission generally is to work with low-income families and give them that little extra hand up they may need to build a family home. We sell them their mortgages. They actually do pay for their homes. It's a 0% interest monthly mortgage. But as we build in clusters and in different neighborhoods in Evansville, the hope is to not just affect these individual families through our program, but to lift up the entire neighborhood where we're building homes, in these, again, we call it cluster buildings, so that it has a more positive effect on the whole neighborhood.
Well, what is Habitat in Kentucky doing on the ground there to help with the tornado victims?
Sure. So there's definitely a precedent with Habitat affiliates. One thing that not everyone knows is we have 1,200 affiliates across the country. So there are certainly many affiliates over in Kentucky. And there's always been a precedent that, when there's a natural disaster, we can step in and help with both repairing homes and building new homes if those homes are to the point where they're too badly damaged or that they're destroyed. In the past, Habitat Evansville, and of course after the 2005 tornado, we built a subdivision called New Haven, where we built 48 homes for people whose houses were destroyed or very badly damaged by that 2005 tornado. So I'm sure there are affiliates in the western portion of Kentucky in particular that are really stepping up right now and making sure that those families who have lost their family homes are receiving some resources and services.
Right. Well, is there an application process for anyone who feels that they would, qualify to benefit from these services?
Sure. So there's an application online. It's a basic credit check form, and that's the way you would start our application process. Essentially, if you want a Habitat home, you have to have a need for housing, an ability to pay that low cost 0% interest mortgage, and a willingness to partner, because our families actually put in 300 hours of work to receive that home. It's not an easy program, but it's definitely worth the hard work.
300 hours?
Yes.
Over how long of a period of time?
It typically takes about a year from the time they actually are accepted into our program. They do budgeting, they do a 6-month money management seminar, they take classes on gardening and being a good neighbor. There's so much that goes into it, and then they put 50 hours into actually physically being out there building their own home as well.
Wow. Well, if anybody watching this says, hey, I want to help Habitat, what's the easiest way that somebody in the community could reach out to you?
Sure. So evansvillehabitat.org is our website. We are always in need of volunteers, whether that's, again, out on the construction site or even in our office. There's a lot of different opportunities, and if you go to that website, there's some more information about volunteering with us.
Well, Megan Parrish, thank you for joining us on Newsmakers.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Amy Wilkerson is the primary prevention director at Albion Fellows Bacon Center, a domestic violence and sexual assault crisis center. Amy, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
How does an event like the tornadoes that happened in Kentucky affect the constituency that you serve?
Well, when we're talking about domestic violence, it's very more complex than people think about or really know. So a lot of times, if there's domestic violence in the household or in that relationship, a tragedy such as a tornado or a natural disaster may actually bring the family back together, because they're going to focus with that certain crisis at that time. It's not to say that it's going to stop the violence. It doesn't, because we also know stress can increase violence in a home, but a lot of times a victim or survivor may stay with their abuser because of the tragedy that they're dealing with at that time.
I would imagine that that might come as a surprise to some people to learn that.
A lot of people, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions out there about domestic and sexual violence. And, it's not just as easy as just leaving. Again, it's not abusive 24/7. On average, a victim will attempt to leave their abusive partner 7 to 11 times before they finally leave for good.
Well, some people think of you all as a crisis center for people in crisis, but that's not all that you do, is it?
No, it's not. Now, we do have our domestic violence shelter that's open to all genders that are fleeing a violent situation. We can provide them with safe temporary housing. But a lot of clients may not need, residential services. So we have our non-residential or outreach services. So anyone that's experienced any type of domestic or sexual violence, either as a primary victim or a secondary victim, is eligible for our services. So they can meet with an advocate over Zoom, over telephone, or in person. We can also help them with their legal advocacy services, because a lot of times the legal services may need to be involved. But then we also have a primary prevention department too, where we're trying to prevent violence from happening in the first place by educating middle school and high school students in the community.
Well, how did the center get started to begin with?
Well, we started 40 years ago. As a matter of fact, we're celebrating 40 years this year. A group of individuals saw a need for this type of service. And it did start off just as a domestic violence shelter, but then we have grown and expanded our services over the year, and we serve 11 counties in Southwest Indiana.
Are there any specific needs that Albion Fellows has at this time?
We always have needs. One thing that we do have an Amazon wish list. We do have a Target wish list. They can go onto our website at albionfellowsbacon.org to get that information, or they can contact our agency. One thing that we always are in need of right now is actually paper products, because with COVID and our shelter services, we're not using like reusable dishes, so we're always needing like paper plates and napkins and cups and utensils. But again, our wish list kind of changes from time to time. That's why I always recommend that you go to our website or check out our wish list registries.
Right. Well, Amy, thank you for being here with us on Newsmakers today.
Well, thank you for having us. I really appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks to all of our guests. This is our last program of the season, and we just wanted to wish you happy holidays. Thanks for watching Newsmakers, presented by WNIN and the Evansville Courier and Press.